Hello and welcome to this third video in the series of the City of Mandurah's Waterwise Verge Program. This video is all about putting a plant in the ground. It's going to be fairly short because it's very easy to do. So I want to show you a method for putting a plant in the ground which is going to give that plant the best chance of getting off to a really good start. So you can just put a plant in the ground with no added nutrients or anything like this, and that plant will do okay. But personally, I like my gardens to be really full growth with really nice bushy plants which I can then prune and keep really beautifully shaped. So to achieve really full growth, I like to start my plants off with a good amount of nutrients in the ground with them. And what I find is this gives the plants a really good push in the first year, creates a nice growth, which then come the following winter I can actually begin to prune and get some shape in the plants. So I'm going to show you how to add additional nutrients and what to put in, and what I personally like to put in. Not everybody would agree with me, but this is what I like to do and I've got great results from doing it. Okay, so I'll just show you a few things over here. So what I'm going to use in with the plant is some compost. I just bought this from a hardware store. This is just an organic compost. I'm going to use some of this. This is a slow release fertilizer. It's a native formula, and so this will release nutrients over a period of about 6 months. And then what I'm also going to put in there is, in terms of feed, I'm going to put some blood and bone in there. And I like blood and bone because it will get things off to a really good start. And then I'm also going to use this material here, which is Easy Wet. It's a wetting agent, and so what this is going to do, this is basically a detergent, and it's going to break the water repelling layer in the sand, which means the water is going to be more able to get into the roots of the plant and support the plant. So using these inputs, what I'm hoping to do is that the plant is going to get off to a really good start, and we'll get strong, healthy plants as a result of putting this in. Other things which you could add in here if you wanted to is some manures. I haven't got manures to put in today. You could quite easily put some cow manure in here or some sheep manure. Don't put chicken manure in, because chicken manure is too rich in phosphorus and can damage the plants. It's too hot. But certainly sheep and cow manure are both very, very good for starting off natives as well. But I like the blood and bone. It seems to get things off to a great start. So the plant which I'm going to put in today, you can see I've got here, and this is a Hakea, and it's called Hakea Burundong Beauty. It lives up to its name. It's a gorgeous plant. It forms a low mounding shrub, and what it does is it flowers all along its stalks, and you get a pincushion Hakea flower. So the flower is very similar to Hakea laurina, which is a very popular shrub. So you'll see this is in a tube. This is tube stock. I like planting from tube stock because this plant is less than a year and old. And so when I pop it out of its pot, you're going to see its root system isn't overdeveloped. That's a very fine root system. Now, the plants you're likely to get are going to be a bit older. They're going to be in round pots, and they're going to have bigger root systems, some of which will be curling around. So one of the things you're going to need to do is, when you get those out of the pot, is break the root system up a little bit, whereas I'm not going to have to do that with this one. Regardless of what you've got, the first thing to do is make sure your plant is thoroughly soaked before you put it in the ground. So before I start digging any holes, I like to put my plants in a bucket of water, and you can see here the plant's in the water, and I've actually let it submerge, and I don't mind that. If this water is just completely soaked in water at the start, that's just fine. So put your plants in water, let them soak, and while they're soaking, you can be getting the ground ready for planting. So now I'm going to actually show you how to put the plant in the ground. So you can see I'm wearing gloves for a change, and this is the spot I've decided to put the plant in. So you can see down here I've got some dead grass, and I'm going to want to dig that out. Now I'm going to want to make a nice large round hole for this plant to be in. The idea is I want to put the plant into a bowl so that it sits in a little bowl of soil, and then when it rains all the water will run down that bowl, and so the water will be more concentrated on the roots of the plant. So I'm going to show you how to go about doing that. So the first thing I need to do is cut a circle in this turf, and you do this with a spade. And so you can see I'm just going to cut round here, You see I've cut the circle of the hole I want, and now if I was going to try and lift that piece of turf it would be very heavy, so I'm just going to begin to section it up. So you can see now these pieces of turf are getting ready to move. So I'm just going to pull this up. Okay, so you can see here what I've got is some soil at the bottom and then the roots of the dead grass on the top. I'm going to try and pull this root matter out and get rid of it. And so this root matter I'm just going to put into the bin because I don't want it on the property, because from experience I've kept this stuff back before, built it up around the plant to make it part of the bowl, and the cooch just shot back from that. So the best thing is to remove it, I think. Okay, so you can see I've cut a nice large circle here. I've removed the dead grass, which I've got over here. This I'm going to put into the bin. I don't want this in the garden, so I'll just push it off to the side for now. And then you can see I've got a space here which is pretty much free of weeds and ready for planting. So what I want to do now is break this up some more and then start putting nutrients in. So now I've broken the soil up, and what I'm going to do is start creating the bowl into which I'm going to put the plant. So you can see now I've formed a nice wide bowl, and into here I'm going to put the nutrients which I'm going to use to get the plant off to a really good start. So I'm going to start by putting in some of this wetting agent. I'm going to use roughly a handful, which I'm just going to sprinkle around a bit. I'm going to put a handful of blood and bone in there, just one handful. It's quite a strong nutrient, we don't want too much of it. Put one handful of the slow release native formula in there. If I was using manure, I'd put maybe 2 handfuls of manure in at this stage. And then I'm going to add some organic compost. I'm adding this compost just to improve the soil structure. So I'm just going to put a few handfuls in like that. And so you can see now in here, I've got a nice mixture of different things. So the other thing which people sometimes put in at this stage is bentonite clay. So you may have heard people talking about adding clay to try and improve the soil retention, water retention of our soils. Our soils are very sandy, clay is very small. People argue that it fills the gap in the sand and therefore improves the water retention. I've added bentonite clay, and I do occasionally add bentonite clay when I'm planting if I've got it. I don't routinely add it. I think our plants are adapted to relatively low water situations, and I'm not sure that they really need the clay. And also the clay is relatively expensive, and when I've used it I haven't necessarily noticed the difference in the results between species which have got clay with them and ones which haven't. So I'm not big on clay, but if you want to put clay in, then this would be the time to put a handful of clay in there as well. Because now I'm going to mix all this up. So all I'm just going to do is mix all these things together and mixing it in with the soil which is already there. So now that I've got the hole formed, the next thing I want to do is flood the hole. So I've just got a garden hose for this. I'll take that off. And just let this flow fill with water. Okay, so you can see I've now flooded this hole, filled this hole with water. So I do this regardless of the weather conditions. So today it's been raining. We've had probably 10 mils of rain, but still the ground was very dry. So even on a rainy day, I still flood the holes. And when I'm planting an entire garden, I'm just doing one demonstration today, but when I'm doing an entire garden, what I usually do is dig a series of holes and then flood one and then flood the next, and then while the second one's flooding, the first one begins to drain. And so I'll have maybe 5 on the go at once, and then so by the time I come back to the first one, it will have drained.
There we go.
So now I'm ready to put the plant in the ground. So here's my lovely little Hakea. So I know that this plant's going to come out of the pot easily, but sometimes they do stick into the pots. If you find that's happening, you just need to tap the side of the pot. I'm going to use the spade. A trowel does the job just as well, probably a bit safer. So you're just going to give it a whack like that. And then the trick to getting these out of the pot is to put your fingers across the top like this, and then turn the pot upside down, and the plant just drops there like that. And then you're supporting the plant between those 2 fingers there. Okay, so you've got the plant out. It's usually a good idea to dig the hole first, but you know. So then you're just going to have a hole here. You can see that's nice and wet down there. And then I'm just going to gently put the plant into there. Now before I put it in, I'll just point out that the root system on this one is already quite loose. I don't really need to do much of this, but if this was a dense root system, I'd be breaking this up with my fingers. Now you can be quite rough with these roots. If you've got a lot of root down here, you can really break them off, and you have to try and break a tight root ball up if it's down here. But this one looks pretty good, so I'm just going to spread those roots a little bit, and that encourages the roots to grow out, which is what you want for a good strong plant. And then I'm just going to drop that in there like that. Now you can see this plant has got quite a lot of stalk on the top of it. If you've got plants with long stalks, you can actually plant them quite deep into the ground. So I'm going to let this go a little bit deeper, and what will happen is you see where it's got all these leaves coming on that stalk, that will just form roots from there. So I'm going to put that down there, and then just gently ease this soil back in here like this. Now you don't want to press too firmly, but just just gently firm it down, and that's the plant in the ground. And that's really all there is to it. So it's really simple. You dig a hole, add some nutrients, mix it all up, put some water in, soak the plants, pop the plant in the ground. Away you go. It's a lot faster once you get going, and you can do a whole garden like this in a few hours. So the final part I want to talk about with planting is putting down your wood chip. So with your plants, you're going to get a delivery of wood chip, and that wood chip is probably going to be dropped on your drive. So you're going to need to spread that onto your garden. The idea is to put it about 10 centimetres deep. The council will deliver enough for you to put it about this deep, and you're just going to spread it across the verge and around the plants. When you're putting it around the plants, you just need to keep it away from the stem of the plant to avoid any sort of rot. Other than that, just put it on nice and thick, spread it out with a metal fork, and then you can smooth it off lastly with a plastic rake. So the last thing that you need to consider in putting down the wood chip is what's going to happen on the edge. So you can see here, this is the edge on our drive, and you can see that the grass comes right up to the edge of the drive. If we were to lay the wood chip here, it would be constantly spilling out onto the drive, and that would be really inconvenient. So the way to deal with this is you're going to cut down here and take out all the way around the edge along all the road. You're going to cut in and just leave a step there. I'm going to show you how to do that now. So to do it, you need a good spade, and all you're going to do is cut in at an angle like this. You're just going to cut in a row. And then you're just going to lift this out. This bit that comes out, same as when you're planting, get rid of the grass root, keep the soil, spread the soil out onto here. And now you can see here, I've got a nice steep step down. And so when the wood chip gets laid, it's going to run down into there. Any movement of the wood chip is just going to run into here, not onto the drive. If that's too steep, you can always just smooth it off with your spade. And just smooth the step down like that. And that's all there is to it.
Yeah. So after you've planted the plant, do you not water it now?
Okay, that's a good question. So at this stage, I wouldn't water this plant. The reason I wouldn't water it was because I flooded the hole. This hole's already wet, very wet, and I soaked my plant in a bucket of water. So I don't think this plant needs any more water at this stage.
When would you water it next?
So the first time I would water this plant would be in a few days' time. It depends on the conditions. If it's raining, you don't need to water. If it's not raining, then you'll need to water in the first few days.
Yeah.
But the nutrients and the compost that we've put in there, and the amount of water that went into that hole at the start, this plant's going to be off to a great start, and this is going to retain water pretty well, particularly as it's cooler at the moment. So I just wanted to bring you to where I've got my plants, just to show you a few extra things about the planting which I didn't cover there. So this is a kangaroo paw, and this is going to be a bit more root bound in its pot. So I'm probably going to have, I'm not sure it's going to come out very easily. Yeah, so that's a bit stuck in the pot, so I'm just going to need to whack this. And this should come out now. Okay, so you can see with this plant, this is the nature of kangaroo paws. They develop a much stronger root system. This plant is less than a year old. This was planted around about November. So you see the way this root ball is really quite dense and quite tight. Now if I just put this in the ground as it is, it's going to be difficult for the plant to begin to put its roots out. So it's important for me to break this up. So I'm actually going to be quite rough in doing this. So I'm going to have to hold this down here to do it. So I'm just going to hold it over this plant here. So what I'm going to do is, you can see I'm just using my fingers just to break this up. And I know sometimes it looks a bit rough to do this to a plant, but in the long run, this is going to really help this plant get going. And if I break some roots off while I'm doing this, I'm really not too concerned about it, because it will get going again. The fact that it's got so much root tells me it's a very strong plant. Okay, so that's much better. So now you can see with all that root broken up, you see now these roots are going to be able to spread out, and it's much looser. And so when I put this in the ground, it's going to get off to a great start. I better put that in the ground. So the other thing I wanted to show you is what to do if you've got a long woody stem on a plant. So this is an acacia which I really like, called Acacia denticulosa. Also sandpaper wattle. This has got a really sandpapery leaf. I love this plant. It's got a very open habit. It'll grow up into quite a decent tree, and it's got long branches, and along those branches when it flowers it has like a catkin type flower, a yellow catkin. It's absolutely gorgeous in flower, and it's got that leaf which I do like. So as you can see, this has got a very long stem, and so something I can do to help this plant get off to a really good start is plant it deeper than you might expect. So normally most people would just plant this, the bottom bit of the plant in the ground. If I were planting this, I would probably plant it up to about this depth here. I know, right? So I would dig a deep hole, again mixing all the nutrients, and then I would try and dig the actual planting hole nice and deep, and get this in about that deep. And so only this part of the plant will be sticking up. And what happens then is these roots, the base roots are really deep down, and then the plant will begin to put out roots. Where it's got leaves, it will begin to throw out roots. And so this plant will get off to a really good strong start by being planted that deep. So this long leggy stock is much better planted deep. If I planted this up high, it'd probably just be a bit stressed. It's got a lot of leaf area, and it'd be blown around in the wind. It wouldn't be good for it. So deep planting when you've got that much stem is the way to go.